All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Michael Cadron. I'm the city's community development director and one of your hosts tonight in the housing room. There are a couple different ways that you can participate, and my co-hosts, Megan, Kara, and Tyler are here to help us stay on track and help you be heard. First, you can simply raise your hand using the Zoom feature to do so, and we'll call on you, unmute your microphone, and then give you the chance to share your idea or question. And your second option is to use the chat feature to share your questions or comments. And I want to highlight that comments that are left in the chat will be collected and used for a future dot exercise where members of the public will be able to upvote your comment to promote the idea for consideration in the City Council's goal setting process. So let me start by saying that housing is a big topic. It's presenting a lot of challenges for cities across the state. This discussion is all about the city's next 2-year financial plan. We are looking for ideas that we can focus on and effectively address during this time period. Over the past 2 years, housing was a major city goal with a focus on housing production, which you can certainly see taking shape around the city. We issued permits for 389 new homes during calendar year 2020. And last year, we also adopted a new housing element that includes policies to guide housing production through 2028. During the housing element update process, we did a lot of community outreach, and I had the chance to hear from many segments of the community about their interests and concerns. I imagine in this group that many of you are concerned that there is too much growth, and many of you feel like we aren't implementing plans fast enough and that more housing supply is needed now. Others will be concerned that we're not seeing the right kind of housing being built in our city. So my message is fundamentally for everybody that the city has carefully planned for growth. We take into consideration a wide variety of factors, things like housing, things like water supply, transportation systems, urban design, affordability, jobs housing balance, air quality, climate change, open space preservation, and parkland, just to name a few. But we certainly haven't thought of everything, and there are always things that we can work on. So tonight is about your ideas, and we're very interested in hearing your comments and engaging in conversation. Before we jump into the questions, I'll just introduce Tyler Corey, who is the city's principal planner, and he'll be able to answer some of the questions tonight and engage in conversation. And also Kara Vereshchagin, who is our housing coordinator. So we're here to listen to you. Thank you. And let's jump in with the first question. But I don't see any hands up. So we need the hand up in order to unmute your mic and give you a chance to make a comment. Otherwise, please use the chat feature. And, if you have ideas, put them in there. If you remember the community forums of the past, and we had the whiteboard exercise, members of the public would share ideas and we put them down on the whiteboard. So the chat feature is much like the whiteboards that we used to use in the community forum. All right, see a couple of hands up.
Okay, let's start with John McKenzie, and then we will move on to Nancy Welts.
Right, nice to see you, John.
John, you have the floor.
You have to unmute your mic.
Okay, you guys had control of the mute. Sorry. Thank you, Michael, and it's good seeing you as well. So I'm just, my issue is, well, I feel that's a laudable effort by the city to always look for affordable housing and provide residential units through mixed use housing or ADUs. My concern is that a third of all of our households, based on national surveys out there, American Veterinary Medical Group has put a surveys out that shows 1/3 of our households have dogs. And what's going on now, we have no backyards, no place for our dogs to run. And so and in looking at dogs and comparing it to the 2019 major goals that were established for the last financial plan, 4 out of those 5 goals are having dog parks would assist or be compatible with those goals. So it's my hope that, and in addition, in the financial long range plan that you've got, you have set aside as part of your wish list to put in a dog park or two. And the Parks and Rec element master plan update is also underway, and its survey work has identified that dog parks are a high priority. So it's my hope, as a part of maybe establishing one of your tasks or objectives as a part of the housing, if that becomes one of the major goals, that dog parks are included in there as well. So hopefully maybe within the next 2 years, we can locate, design, and build a dog park here in the city of San Luis Obispo. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John.
All right, and next we'll move to Nancy Welts.
Thank you. Hi, housing people. Nice to see you again. I wanted to echo John's comments about the affordable housing stock and mixed use developments. I want to also go a little bit more radical and just say land use. I wish that you would rezone and get away from R1 single use housing and do more zoning that is mixed use. I don't know what the RENA numbers are in terms of if we can radically rezone residential neighborhoods to be more mixed use and get more people into affordable housing. But I would definitely advocate for that. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Nancy. And I will highlight that we do have a program in our new housing element that talks about missing middle housing. And one of the focuses of the Missing Middle project is to look at single family residential neighborhoods, particularly in those areas that have access to major transportation corridors, parks, and other features that make them suitable to support additional housing. And we're looking at those single family neighborhoods, say along Foothill Boulevard, along Johnson, along Grand Avenue, where you have R1, like you're saying, R1 single family zoning along major transportation corridors, and considering different kinds of architectural building types that would allow for multiple units on a single lot. So you have a single family home, you might have a duplex, a triplex, a quad, a bungalow court, but you have architectural styles that are still compatible with that residential single family neighborhood. And so in that way, we think that we can maintain our compact urban form and potentially add a new increment of housing to the community in the order of 300, 500, 700 units. We're across the city. So it won't drastically change any one neighborhood, but would allow for more housing to be located in those areas that are primarily single family. So thank you for your comment, and just looking to see more hands up. Folks, feel free to raise your hand or put your ideas in the chat. We're here to listen to you.
All right, Susan, I'm seeing your hand is being raised next, so you may provide your comment.
Okay, hi. Are you hearing me?
Yep.
Okay. I am a big advocate of as much, I say, truly affordable housing as we can possibly put together. And I, as a former housing developer, I know how hard it is because it takes a lot of subsidy money to make housing affordable to the lower income people who work in our schools and restaurants and even police department. But this is essential. And having had some experience with the homeless population, it's all tied together. So I wonder what is our current inclusionary zoning minimum requirement? Is it a standard requirement? Like, for example, I think it's perhaps 20% in Santa Barbara. I'm not sure, but 20% is a good standard. And last time I checked, I think we were below that. And I'm just wondering about that and whatever you, what are the priorities in terms of finding the funds and working closely with the low cost developers like People Self-Help and the Housing Authority?
Thank you for the comments. Those are great. If your comment is, that we should be increasing our inclusionary housing requirement, that's very topical for us is we're getting ready to update our inclusionary housing ordinance, and we're going to look closely at that percentage, at those percentages. Right now, the percentage for development within the city limits, within the 1994 city limits, is 3% low or 5% moderate income housing for a development project. That's quite low. But what's different than Santa Barbara is that the city also has a inclusionary housing fee on commercial development. So while we are requiring new affordable housing with every new housing project, we're also collecting affordable housing fees with commercial development that we're using to work with our nonprofit partners, like the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo County and People's Self-Help Housing Corporation, to actually go out and construct more affordable housing. And that affordable housing tends to be deeper affordability in terms of the very low and extremely low income categories. So actually a couple of recently constructed projects that you can take a look at on Broad Street. Haslo has constructed a new affordable housing project essentially across the street from the Damon Garcia sports fields. And then in the new Toscano neighborhood, which is also near Sarah Meadows, we call that the Margarita area. The courtyard, Haslo has created the courtyard project, which is also a low and very low income affordable housing development. And so we are trying to develop affordable housing essentially with every housing project. We look to incorporate affordable housing. We offer great incentives to people that want to provide affordable housing as a component of their project. A number of projects recently have taken advantage of the density bonuses that are available when you build a residential project and include affordable housing. You can get more market rate units by providing those affordable units, and so that's a big incentive. But we have done a nexus study that shows that we do have the ability to require more affordable housing of development than we currently do. And I do expect that that will be a topic of conversation for the city council and for the community as we take on the project of updating our inclusionary housing ordinance. So thank you for that comment, Susan. All right, just looking for some more hands up.
All right, I see a hand from Community Action, Slow CDP. You may now present your comment.
Yes, hi. So sorry. My name is Donna Hare Price. I'm a resident of San Luis Obispo. I just didn't rename myself. I have a question. I know that we're facing not only massive evictions, COVID-related evictions in California, especially with the sunsetting of AB 3888, but we also know that our renters here in San Luis Obispo not only have an inability to pay rent, but there will be massive debt that they are accumulating, and obviously that will go with them. Is there a mechanism or a means to use our housing funds for affordable housing to keep people housed with rent and mortgage relief? So that instead of focusing on building housing, new housing in 2021-22, that we instead focus on keeping people housed and reducing homelessness. Can that be done with housing funds?
Sure. Currently, the city maintains an affordable housing fund, and the city council, when it established the fund, adopted a resolution that specified how those dollars can be spent. And the way that the restriction on that fund right now requires those dollars to be spent for the creation of new affordable housing. So the concept of providing rent relief to residents currently is not possible, but if your comment is that that's how we should use that resource, then we'll certainly record that and give people the option of, voting for that idea, and the city council will then be able to consider it as an idea for the next 2 years going forward. I would like Kara to share some information with you about efforts that are happening at the state and federal level to provide funding across communities. So not just City of San Luis Obispo, but for a much wider population.
Right. I'm actually part of a statewide housing coalition looking at AB 3088 and AB 15 and 16. So I'm well aware of state and federal measures. I was just wondering if that could be done, if there's any way to use RENA funds or anything else to keep people housed.
Yeah, and actually, so our jurisdiction, the city of San Luis Obispo, participates in what we call an urban county a program when we receive our federal funds. So that includes our Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. And our jurisdiction has actually, or our kind of structure, right, that is that we participate in, along with the County of San Luis Obispo and a few other cities in within our county. We've actually received, we're expected to receive about $2 million or so through the third round of CARES Act, coronavirus, CDBG, round 3 funding. So the acronym that's been thrown around is CDBG-CV3. And actually earlier this week, a committee of our interagencies actually met to review the applications that were received. And rent relief is definitely something that was requested by a lot of our nonprofit service organizations. And so there'll be a recommendation that will be going forward to the Housing Services Oversight Council on January 20th, which will ultimately be considered by the Board of Supervisors to utilize that funding potentially for rent relief and costs associated with what you're speaking towards.
Kara, is there any way I could receive that recommendation that you will be sending on to HSOC?
Yeah, so the best contact who can give you the recommendation is the county, because the County of San Luis Obispo Housing Department actually oversees this effort for us. So Tony Navarro at the county is the main staff member, but I can absolutely put you in touch with him on next steps on this process.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, it was CDBG CD3 is the acronym now?
CV as in Victor.
Oh,
like
awesome.
Coronavirus, and then round 3.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I appreciate that. I will reach out to Tony Navarro and also Bruce Gibson to see if we
Perfect.
can get a hold of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks,
Mhm.
guys.
All right, who else has comments for us? Questions, anything that you'd like to share?
There's some topics that came up in the chat, Michael, if you want to toggle
yeah.
over and check those out, you could maybe speak to some of it.
I can't see the chat. How do I don't know if I have to stop sharing.
Oh, if you go down to the bottom of your screen where your toolbar is, there should be an icon that says chat. Can you even see your toolbar?
No, because I'm sharing. So let me stop sharing real quick and pull that up. Oh, there it is. And then I will share my screen back. Okay. All right. All right, so from John McKenzie, affordable and mixed-use housing will continue. Residential densification will continue eliminating backyards. A third of households will have dogs. They have no place to exercise and socialize. We need to establish enclosed dog parks and city parks. So we heard that from John. From Alejandro, provide no or low income housing via the use of eminent domain, fill hotels, not graves, enact a wealth tax to provide full rent, mortgage and utility relief for all, retroactive to April, to allow everyone to stay home and to allow us to weather the COVID-19 crisis. Divest from policing, reject any proposed expansion to police budgets or facilities, reduce police budget and headcount by 33%. Astra, a rent cap should be implemented and sufficient parking should be built alongside new housing. Affordable, low or no income housing should be prioritized. Divest from policing completely and abolish police and SLO. In the long term, we probably shouldn't even have landlords. Okay, some comments in the chat there. And I think I'll just continue to read those as they become available because then it'll be on the recording for those that tune in later. So feel free, folks, to put information in the chat or to raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll wait for others to join as maybe they, the other rooms as they transition from the other rooms.
And as a reminder, I put a link in the chat. If you would like to return back to the city's website and select a different breakout session topic, you can just click that link and return and kind of go in between different rooms that might interest you.
And Michael, I'm not seeing the speaker or the attendee who presented the rent cap comment, but we could talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, the state of California, that, you know, there was a new law that was enacted the beginning of this year, I want to say, that did enact a rent cap on a majority of you know, housing units throughout the state of California. It's 5% plus, it's capped at 5% plus any, I think, kind of CPI increase, you know, so nothing exceeds 10%. And so there are units in the city that definitely applies to.
Right, and there was a eviction moratorium that was implemented for a short period of time to prevent folks from evicting tenants in advance of the rent cap going into effect.
Right.
Michael, you want to pull up that map that you were showing us earlier
For sure.
from 1977? That thing was pretty cool.
Yeah, let's see. Oh. Yeah, whenever I talk about housing, I love to show this map from 1977, almost 45 years ago, because if you study it carefully, you can see that this heavy bold dashed line around the boundary, that's our urban growth boundary. We call it, in our general plan right now, it's called the urban reserve line. And what's interesting about the urban reserve line is that it essentially has not changed since 1977. There are some areas where, you know, the urban reserve line has actually been reduced, so it's been shrunk, it's gone in, and there's a couple of other areas where it's expanded just a little bit. But for the most part, it is the same. And I think what that shows is a commitment that the city has to compact urban form, in that our growth is intended to maximize the efficiency of the land that's already dedicated to urban development, and we're working hard to preserve the land in the greenbelt outside of that urban reserve line and growth boundary. And so, some of the development that you're seeing right now in the Orcutt area, for instance, in the southeast quadrant of the cities, of the city limits, that's happening right now, and that was envisioned as far back as 1977 and even before that. The Margarita area is also an area where some housing is being constructed right now and has been over the past several years. The Irish Hills area has developed with some new housing, and there are plans for some more. The Delidio, that's actually San Luis Ranch. So within this entire Delidio area, we've actually preserved about 50% of that land for agriculture and allowed for housing development in that area as well as some commercial development along Los Osos Valley Road and Cali Joaquin. So our plan has been remarkably stable, and it's a credit to the people that were committed to planning at that time. It's probably also a function of being close to Cal Poly University, which has had a strong planning program for many years and contributed a lot of great thinking and resources to city planning over the years. So it's something I like to share, and it's nice, I think, for people to see this to gain some perspective. And the other piece of information that I have about housing in the city of San Luis Obispo is, what our plan for growth is. And table 3 of the land use element of our general plan actually shows the number of dwellings that we plan to build in the community through 2035, which is our projected year of build out. What we've done is we've correlated population with the number of dwellings that we're expecting. And so these are important numbers from the standpoint of the water supply planning that we do for managing our transportation systems, for managing our parkland to make sure that we have the right ratio of parkland to residents, and a variety of other factors. And so, there's a lot that goes into development in the city in terms of the amount of study and planning that's occurred. And we are now seeing some growth that we haven't seen in some time. So that is also very exciting. 398 new homes permits were issued for new homes in the city of San Luis Obispo in 2020. And so even though 2020 was really a challenging year for a lot of segments of the community and for a lot of our residents, and of course, COVID has been terrible. At the same time, construction has been an essential service from the get-go, especially the provision of housing. And our department, community development, has continued to be able to accommodate that. And so we have seen quite a lot of housing construction in the city. And since that was our goal, we're very happy to see that. Lindy, feel free to raise your hand if you want to make a comment or ask a question.
A lot of people are talking about all of the building and construction that's going on right now, but I think it's important to mention that for many years we didn't reach the 1% growth rate, and this is playing catch up, what you're seeing now, a lot of the houses that are being built.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in fact, in terms of growth rates, this table that I'm displaying right now is from our annual report on the general plan. And so you can kind of see since 2015, the number of units that have been constructed each year. And like I said, 398 units in 2020 represents, I think, progress towards the 1% that we have planned to accomplish. but thank you for your comment. Do you have any ideas for us in terms of goals to consider for the next 2-year financial plan? And anybody who does, feel free to raise your hand. All right, Tyler, you're on.
I am on, huh? All right. Well, I wish I had some slides to offer, but those few that you did put up were really interesting. I think that seeing that 1977 map, I haven't seen that one in a while, but seeing all of our kind of expansion areas actually come to fruition, being under construction, is pretty exciting to see. And knowing that we just completed adoption of our 6th cycle housing element, we have a ton of work that is on our plate over the next 8 years, especially over the next 3 years, with some really key programs. And I think there was some discussion around inclusionary housing, which is a high priority one. Michael, you mentioned missing middle housing, which is looking at some of our transportation corridors, looking at some different housing prototypes that could work there, increasing densities. We have our flexible density program we're working on in our downtown, Upper Monterey and Mid-High Garrett areas to look at smaller units and not having those count towards density restrictions or requirements. And so there's a variety of exciting programs that we're going to be working on. And then there's some that are being mandated as well by the state to get our housing kind of programs more in alignment with some of their goals. And so it's really going to be an exciting time, I think, in the city, and especially be working in housing over the next 5 to 10 years here. It's going to be, I think, a lot of great progress. And like you mentioned, love to hear ideas, or and we'll be reaching out through all of these programs to all of you. So whoever, not only on this call, but whoever might see this later, please sign up for on our city website. You can select specific interests, and one of them would be housing or general plan amendments or municipal code amendments. And so all of those will be things we'll be looking at as well. And so you can stay informed by signing up and getting notifications when things are moving forward, or also reaching out to myself, Kara, as well, for updates as we move forward with those initiatives.
Great, thank you. And we got a couple new people joining the room, so I just want to welcome them and let them know that they can raise their hand if they have any comments or questions that they'd like to make. Feel free to put information in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. Hi, Biz, how you doing? Great to see you. Let us know if you have a question or comment. You can just raise your hand. All right, so just continuing the conversation. Did want to let folks know we have issued the first 25 building permits in the San Luis Ranch project, and that's a long time coming. So folks have seen all the construction of public improvements happening on Delidio and Madonna, seeing all the grading and the relocation of the historic farmhouses. And now we've issued 25 building permits, and those are for some models. There's also a sales trailer out there. So folks have any interest in learning more about that project, they can head out to the sales trailer and ask their questions. Also, the Avila Ranch housing project, which is located on the corner of Buckley and Vachel, is undergoing all of their public improvements right now, and they have plans submitted for design review. So we are starting to take a look at that. I mentioned earlier that the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo County is just in the very, very final stretches of getting occupancy of their courtyard affordable housing project located in the Toscano project, which is in the Margarita area. So that's north of Prado Road there, east of South Higuera Street. It's a beautiful project and really one that's worth checking out. It's nothing like the affordable housing you might imagine or might have seen in times past. It's really a beautiful project that's very well amenitized and provides something for everyone. So they do have a lot in the works, and they're great partners of ours. So we're excited to see that. All right, anybody want to put any ideas in the chat? Remember now, anything you put in the chat will be available during our dot exercise. So the community will be able to see your idea and essentially upvote it for consideration by the city council in the goal setting process. So if you do have any ideas, please go ahead and pop it into the chat. All right, so as folks continue to join, feel free to go ahead and add information into the chat or raise your hand if you want to ask any questions. I think things are slowing down maybe in some other rooms and some folks are coming over to housing. So nice to see you, welcome. Please let me know if you have any questions about housing in the city of San Luis Obispo. We would be happy to discuss it.
I see Biz has her hand up. So Biz, if you want to submit your comment to the group, you are welcome.
Thank you. I'm here. I had jumped from homeless, but as a member of the Housing Authority Commission, I just wanted to share with whoever's participating that Haslo really appreciates our partnership, obviously, with the city and all the developments that we've been able to be part of with private development as well. In the other group, people asked about the old Maxine Lewis shelter location. And so I just wanted everybody to know that that property is owned by Haslo and that there's just preliminary discussions going on about how to best use that property as one of the next projects. And Michael brought you up to date on the most recent. So thank you. And thanks for your support for affordable housing.
All right, thank you, Biz.
Thanks, Biz.
Tyler, do we have an application for that site yet? Do we have anything going?
You know, we don't have an application. I remember we did see some conceptual designs a while back, and I think they were, I think the feedback was we wanted to probably see more intense development there and more units than probably what initially came in. So I haven't gotten an update. Biz, I don't know if you have any updates on where that might stand.
You're on mute.
Tyler, not really. I know that parking is a potential issue there. I think, it's having gotten the use permit for that shelter in '89, it's a limiting site. But I know that I too would like to see a higher number than originally planned. And they're trying to figure out a way to maybe, I don't know, go 2 stories or something, but nothing, we haven't looked at any final anything yet as the commission.
Right. Well, we're here to, support you and provide any feedback and answer, obviously any questions that you have, either whether related to parking or setbacks or height or anything. So please, reach out and we can work with you on that.
Do we have news about any other affordable housing projects in the works, Sarah?
Yes, so actually right now we are looking to close financial escrow on a new project titled Broad Street Place, which is right next to Ironworks. That was built by Haslo a couple years ago, right across from the Damon Garcia Sports Fields on Broad Street. So this project is really cool. I'm really excited about it. It has it'll be 40 new units, and it's being developed by People's Self-Help Housing. And they were really lucky enough to secure it's around a $3 million grant from the state of California through their Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention program. So 10 of those 40 units are actually going to be reserved for veterans that have been that are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. So that's a really cool project, and we're hoping to get everything all closed up with all the different lenders in the next month or so. So they expect to break ground in March.
All right, thanks for that update.
Yeah.
All right, and there's a question in the chat. Is there any way to streamline permitting and approval processes city to city throughout SLO County? Maybe take best practices from each city. Well, that's a good idea. I know that the county has recently taken some real leadership in the area of housing and infrastructure in particular. We had the opportunity to work with Carolyn Berg of the county over the past year and a half, 2 years, in terms of working on our housing elements. And there's a really neat feature of all the housing elements in the county right now. It's a regional focus on providing housing and some similar policies to support affordable housing and infrastructure development in the various cities. In terms of permit streamlining, I will say that the community development directors, the planning directors for all the cities and the county, we get together regularly to meet, and we share what's working and what isn't. And I'd be happy to suggest that we have an agenda item on this topic. I'd really like to hear from Phil Dunsmore up in Atascadero, what they're doing for permit streamlining. All around there are good ideas that are being put into practice. And so we also have new state law that requires us to minimize the number of public hearings that an individual project might have to experience. And so that's caused us to change our processes to reduce the potential that a project might have to go to an excessive number of public hearings. And so there are things that are happening at the state level, and there's also just best practices. As things work, community development directors talk, and we're able to implement change. So I think that that's possible, and we're always open to new ideas, certainly.
Yeah, and I would add that was a kind of a theme that we were hearing from the state as we were updating our housing element to kind of eliminate some of the barriers, obviously, to housing construction, and some of our processes we will be kind of looking at and taking a close look at our different thresholds that we have established for our different levels of review, and seeing if those need to be adjusted in terms of allowing larger projects to be able to be reviewed through a lower hearing process or review process. So that's all a part of it, as well as allowing mixed use projects in our commercial zones. So not just our retail commercials, but our service commercial and manufacturing zones without requiring a use permit. So that's another kind of piece that we'll be focused on as well.
Thanks, Tyler. And Owen has a question here in the chat. What does the current relationship between SLO's housing development and SLO's current climate action plan look like? Are things like housing design standards and materials used that would decrease energy usage part of the discussion in supporting the climate action plan while increasing housing development? So great question, absolutely. Both climate action and housing were major city goals over the past 2 years, and it's something that I had the opportunity, our whole team had the opportunity to work on those things kind of concurrently. So you may know that the city of San Luis Obispo has adopted a REACH code for energy, and we've adopted a preference for all electric new buildings. So some of our major new subdivisions, San Luis Ranch and Avila Ranch, there's also a component of the Orcutt area, are developing, and those homes are all electric. And by virtue of our membership and partnership with the Central Coast Community Energy Group. Basically, when you plug into the wall or when you build a home that's all electric, that is carbon-free energy. So the city of San Luis Obispo, by default, you do have the ability to opt out if that's not the energy source you want, but by default, you will be using energy that is carbon-free. So it's from hydro, it's from wind, it's from solar, and it's a really tying to the grid and cleaning the grid is thought to be the fastest way to achieve reduced carbon emissions from energy. So that's in the built environment, that's really been the focus. But I'll also say, just in terms of our land use plan, as I've said before, the city of San Luis Obispo is very committed to a compact urban form, and we're committed to improving our jobs housing balance. So when new housing is constructed in the city of San Luis Obispo, all the models show that reduces commutes. It makes your commute shorter. You have more options for how you can shop, how you can get to work by using transit, by using bike, and by walking. And so housing in San Luis Obispo in all of the models of vehicle miles traveled is something that's very positive in the climate action arena in terms of reducing emissions from vehicle trips. So I think our land use plan contributes greatly to our ability to achieve our climate action goals. One thing in your question that you asked about is about materials, and that is an area that we have not gotten into yet in terms of the embedded energy associated with building materials, but that is an area that I expect to be addressed in the future as our progress on climate change moves forward. So thank you for the question. It's definitely something that we're lucky to have. Chris Reed is the city's sustainability manager, is somebody who's a sort of an expert on climate change and working hard every day on both city operations from a greenhouse gas emission standpoint, as well as looking at energy use in the community as it relates to both new development and existing developments. So there are incentive programs and other work is being conducted to help people do the fuel switch if they want to become all electric, and that's becoming easier than ever as well. All right, any other comments? Feel free to raise your hand if you want to add anything to the conversation or add a question in the chat. See some other folks have joined us, so feel free to share your thoughts with us. Hi, Melanie.
Hi there. I was curious about, nice to see you tonight. I was curious about passive solar. And it's something that I haven't seen in relation to like the big developments that are happening in town. And I know it's something that can reduce our reliance on fuel to heat our homes and cool them. And I'm just curious if that's something that the city has looked at incorporating into our requirements or making having incentives related to passive solar systems.
Great, thank you for the question. We do have guidelines, and we do have in our subdivision regulations and in other guidance documents information that encourages solar orientation to take advantage of passive solar. We don't have that at the ordinance level that requires it, and it's certainly something that a conscientious builder who's looking to take advantage of the free energy that's available from the sun, that they can take advantage of that. Not all locations can, just based on topography and trees and other things in the area, but for the most part, we certainly encourage it. You do see from time to time buildings at an angle relative to the lot because they're trying to take advantage of and having that south wall be as expansive as possible and let in as much light as possible, allow it to heat during the day. In terms of a requirement or a standard, we don't have that. And so if what I recommend is that you put that in the chat so that it's a comment that can be considered by others as they're looking to put their dots in action and give the city council something to think about in terms of a goal for the next 2 years. All right. Any other questions, comments? Well, it's about 8 o'clock, so I think we're how much longer do we have, Megan?
We have about 10 more minutes on the agenda. It says 8:15 is when community input part 2 starts, and that includes a polling exercise.
Oh, more polling, all right. Okay, well, if anybody has anything they'd like to hear me talk about or Tyler or Kara address, we are more than happy to weigh in. And Melanie, I know I owe you an email too, so I'll follow up with you tomorrow.
Starting to lose a few folks.
Anything you think I should hit on, Tyler?
Anything you should hit on?
For posterity? This is being recorded.
I know. It's good. That's a good reminder. It's hard to say. There's a lot of action going on all over town, and so we're very busy here trying to keep up, not only from the entitlement side but also from the building permit side. So there's a lot of work and a lot of resources that as we move through this financial plan process, we're going to have to look at to see how to match that with with the community demand and what we're seeing out there. So that's just something to keep in mind as we continue this goal setting process and resource allocation effort.
I think to piggyback on that too, Tyler, as Michael mentioned, we have a lot of kind of new reporting requirements that we have to comply with from the state of California. Now tracking our housing numbers in terms of our regional housing needs allocation, our RHNA, and where our kind of below market rate units are located, which is going to be new for us.
Yeah, good point, Kara. And it was interesting to see that in the governor's proposed budget, there is actually a housing accountability officer that's essentially being proposed. And so something to make sure that communities across the state that are planning to provide more housing actually go ahead and provide that housing and make that possible.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I mean, I think we're doing a good job so far, and I'm excited about our plans. I think that I welcome the accountability, but also think that it's got to be right for our community. It's got to be the right. We've got to grow according to the resources that we have available, and we've got to be providing housing to all segments of the community. And so that's the most important thing. All right, a couple new folks joined the room. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions or add information into the chat. We're getting ready to wrap up, so now's your chance to ask a question. All right, got you, Ethan. Good to see you in the chat. Hey. Anything you want to hear about as far as housing and SLO?
I was reading through the new housing element the other day, but I really got to dig in. It's just so huge, obviously.
Gotcha.
Maybe something to touch on, Michael, a little bit is flexible density.
Right. Yeah, Tyler mentioned that we're working on a couple of different exciting projects. One is the Missing Middle Housing Project, and I talked about that earlier in the chat, but flexible density is another one. Creative idea where primarily in the downtown area, what we're trying to do downtown is to promote smaller, more affordable housing units. And so one of the things that we found is that density, the number of units that can be developed within a building, and that's based on the size of the property, is in fact driving people to build larger units. So we sort of have a artificially low density standard in the downtown. So what we've done is said, through this project, if you're going to build a unit that's below 600 square feet, then you can build as many of those as can fit in the building, given all the other property development standards. So we have height limits in the city. We have requirements for setbacks above the third story. There are building design considerations that reduce the size of buildings, a variety of factors. But if you're going to build, studio one-bedroom units under 600 square feet, we're going to allow you to put as many of those into the building. And in that way, create more housing supply, more affordable housing in the downtown core. That's the concept. It's something that's being worked on right now in terms of the total number of units that might be possible through a program like that. I believe it's in the area of 400 to 500 units. So it's not a program that will completely change downtown. It's just one that with every new project that's constructed, the opportunity to provide a little more housing that's a little bit more affordable by virtue of it being a smaller floor plan. That's a program that's in our housing element that we are working feverishly on at the moment and developing graphics to help people understand how it works. And we will be sharing an update with the City Council in March. So the second City Council meeting in March, which I believe, let me look at my calendar really quickly here, March 16th. Tuesday, March 16th, we're presenting a housing update to the City Council, where we'll talk a little bit about flexible density, talk a little bit about missing middle housing and these projects that we're working on. We're going to give an update to the City Council on new housing legislation from the state, because there was new legislation in 2020, just like there was the prior 3 years, really. So that is ongoing, and it's something that our City Council really wants to stay up on and make sure that the community is aware of what the requirements are from the state level for us in terms of housing policy, housing production. And we also hopefully will have an update for the City Council on certification of our housing element at that meeting too. We're expecting comments back from the State Department of Housing and Community Development right around that period of time. And hopefully we get the news in time for the March 16th meeting. It would be wonderful to be able to share with the City Council that we have a certified housing element during that meeting. That would really be good. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
If we have even just a second left, perhaps a good way to wrap up is what's like one project or planning change coming up maybe in the next year or two that you're really excited about?
Well, I think what I'm most excited about is updating our inclusionary housing requirement. I think we have an opportunity to fine tune our program to accomplish more affordable housing with every housing project that's developed in the city. We had a Nexus study that showed us that there is a relationship between new housing constructed and new commercial development driving the need for affordable housing. And so it's a legitimate exercise of the city's land use authority and our police powers to be able to create a requirement for that new development to contribute to solving or providing more affordable housing for the whole community. And so that's really a project that has been a long time in the works, probably can't happen soon enough, but one that is going to take some time, a lot of discussion in the community. And do look forward to that and ask everybody who's interested in affordable housing to participate in that process. So thank you for that question.
I just wanted to remind everyone that at 8:15, we encourage you to return back to the main session where there's going to be the community input part 2 and more polling exercises. So you can submit more of your comments. There's going to be a section for public comment, and then there's going to be some closing remarks by Mayor Heidi Harmon. And the link is located in the chat.
This has been a great discussion.
I agree. Thank you, Kara. Thanks for making it happen. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah. Do you guys have any feedback for us on this virtual exercise?
I think it's worked really well. It's been really nice to. The hard part has been seeing all these people's faces and wanting to say hi and wanting to have a conversation, but you can't always do it. Like, hi, Grace. Grace just joined.
Hey, Michael.
Nice to see you. All right. Yeah, I can't really think of other improvements. It's don't you think it's been working pretty smoothly, Megan?
I think so. Any of our attendees that have been going between the different rooms, have you found it to be pretty easy to use?
Grace, we have just a few minutes left, so if you wanted to put an idea into the chat or share anything, we'll still be able to capture it and make it available to folks to upvote during the thought exercise. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, sounds like it could be a wrap.
I think it's we've come to that time.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone that did come through and provide their comments and questions, all good stuff and things we'll take a closer look at kind of later on once we wrap up the meeting tonight and look at this over the next week or so.
Yeah, the hard part about being in this room all night is not being able to see what's going on everywhere else. So
I know.
Yeah, I'm really curious.
Check it all out.
I'm antsy.
Hey, I don't, did you see my chat? I sent up a chat. Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
All right.
Yep. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, housing for elderly, excellent. The Froome Ranch project, which includes the Bellagio continuing care retirement community, they have an affordable housing site within the Froome Ranch specific plan, and at one point, had conversations with that developer and very interested in seeing that the affordable housing sites next to Bellagio, that could be a senior housing, affordable project. And at least in the early conversations, the discussion was that those folks could have access to some of the features within development. And there's going to be a movie theater, there's going to be all these great things. And from their standpoint, it's not necessarily exclusive to residents of Bellagio. So that could really be a great outcome if it ends up being developed that way. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
It's a need that's getting worse and worse. We know that as the baby boomers are aging. Fixed incomes versus what is affordable housing are getting further and further apart. So whatever can be done. I know Biz said she mentioned, I think earlier, that Haslo was looking at the old Maxine Lewis you know,
Yes.
property, that would be a great thing. That would be great.
Mhm.
That's all I'm gonna say now.
I think we're about 1 minute till.
All right. 8:15. I think I'll stop my share.
Well, nice job.
Thanks, Saul. Good
Thank you
work.
very much. Grace, I've put the link back to the main session in the chat if you'd like to use that to participate in the next session.
Thanks for all your help, Megan.
Yeah, no
Appreciate
problem.
it.
Thank you guys. I'm going to
Thank
stop the
you all.
recording and we'll end this breakout.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.